Welcome to Stories of Brave Mothers, a channel dedicated to telling real and touching stories of brave mothers from around the world.
She had no money, no business partners, not even time. But she had a mission to pay for her son's college with her own hands and with her own sweets. While many give up when faced with the impossible, she opened the oven, rolled up her sleeves, and faced the world with courage, sugar, and faith. This is the story of Susan Miller, a brave mother who turned brownies into diplomas and sleepless nights into a brilliant future. And the most surprising part, it all began in a tiny kitchen with a dream as big as a mother's love. The small town of Wayland, deep in rural Ohio, was waking up slowly. Dry leaves danced along the sidewalks as the first rays of sun slipped through the trees. It was October. The air carried a faint scent of cinnamon and burnt wood. On that chilly Tuesday morning, Susan Miller was already up before the alarm went off, just like she had done every day for years. Susan was 45, fair skin, a face marked by time and persistent smiles. Her light brown hair, tied up in a casual bun, was already showing a few strands of gray. Her gaze was steady, yet soft, like someone who had learned to endure, but refused to harden on the inside. She wore a faded blue sweater, worn-out jeans, and old sneakers. With cold hands, she opened the pantry and pulled out the ingredients she'd need that day. Flour, eggs, chocolate, brown sugar. The ritual was always the same. She turned on the old kitchen radio, her father's, and let it play some soft country music. It helped her keep her mind in the right place. The oven groaned as it turned on, as if complaining about having to work so early again. But Susan didn't care. She was determined. Every batch of cookies, every tray of brownies or cupcakes, meant only one thing: one more step toward her son's dream. Upstairs, Ethan was still asleep. Her only son, 17 years old, brown hair like hers, intelligent and kind eyes. He was the kind of boy who held doors open for others, helped classmates with homework, and never left a room without saying, "Thank you." A good boy, a boy with big dreams. Since he was little, Ethan said he wanted to be an aerospace engineer. When he was 8, he wrote an essay in school. "I want to build rockets to take people to Mars." Susan still kept that paper, folded in 4, at the back of a drawer. But the real world was more complicated. Their reality was simple. Susan worked as an administrative assistant at a small dental clinic 3 days a week, and her salary barely covered the basics. Her husband, Ethan's father, had left when the boy was 5. Since then, it had just been the two of them, Susan and Ethan, mother and son, an unbreakable duo. Ethan studied hard. He always had perfect grades, participated in science fairs, helped with the robotics club. He earned a partial scholarship to his dream college, the prestigious Ohio State University. But the scholarship didn't cover everything. About $12,000 per year were still missing. Susan did the math. Even if she worked twice as much, she wouldn't be able to cover it on her own. It was one afternoon, while organizing old boxes in the basement, that Susan found her old recipe notebook. It had belonged to her mother, who had passed away 10 years earlier. Each handwritten page, stained with butter or vanilla, was a living memory. She smiled, moved, and then had the idea. "What if I sold sweets?" she murmured to herself. At first, it seemed silly, but she remembered. Everyone always praised her brownies. At Christmas, friends asked for her ginger cookies. At church, her cupcakes were gone, before Mass even ended. That night, she shared the idea with Ethan. He frowned, concerned. "Mom, you already do so much." "I'm still breathing, Ethan. And as long as I breathe, I'll fight for you." But selling sweets on the street, selling dreams, son, and yours is worth more than anything. Ethan didn't argue. He knew his mother. Once she decided something, nothing could stop her. The next weekend, Susan set up her first little stand at a local farmer's market in the neighboring town. She brought a red checkered cloth, a cardboard sign that read, "Sweet Susan's," handwritten, and 3 types of treats: chocolate chip cookies, double brownies, and apple cinnamon muffins. Her hands were shaking. Susan had never done anything like that. She was surrounded by polished booths, professional packaging, and even card machines. Hers looked like something out of the 80s, but she smiled. As always, she looked each customer in the eye and greeted them with kind words. Sales were slow that day. She came home with half the boxes untouched, but Ethan was waiting for her on the porch with 2 cups of hot tea and a silent hug. That was enough. In the days that followed, Susan started planning better. She created a small menu, researched how to legally sell homemade food in the county, printed labels with ingredients and expiration dates. Every Saturday, she returned to the market. On Sundays, she sold outside the church. On Wednesdays, at school events. Sometimes, she parked her car in front of local markets or the neighborhood laundromat with a box in the back seat and a smile on her face. What had started out improvised became routine, and the routine became hope. But the days weren't easy. Susan left the clinic at 5 in the afternoon, came home exhausted, tied on her apron, and headed straight to the stove. She slept little, lived with back pain. Some nights, she cried silently in the bathroom so Ethan wouldn't worry. Ethan noticed and did his part. He cleaned the kitchen, organized the packaging, prepared the orders. Sometimes he stayed at the stand with her. Other times, he stayed home studying because he couldn't let his grades drop. The college still required a high GPA. One day, at a fair downtown, an elderly woman bought a muffin, took a bite, closed her eyes and said, "Sweetheart, this reminds me of my mother's cake. My mom was the one who taught me." Susan replied, moved. The woman smiled, kissed her on the cheek and said, "You're going places. The love you put into this, you can feel it." Susan held back the tears. Every word like that was another brick in her fortress. But not everyone was kind. "Why don't you get a different job?" asked a former co-worker after spotting her on the street. "Because no job will let me sweeten people's lives and still pay for my son's future." Criticism never broke her, because she knew her mission. And the mission of a brave mother isn't measured by other people's eyes, but by the strength that comes from within. One Saturday, a well-dressed woman approached the stand and asked if she took custom orders for parties. Susan could hardly believe it. It was the principal of a private school in the area. "A student brought one of your cupcakes for lunch. I've never had anything so homemade and delicate at the same time." It was a large order. Susan had to stay up several nights preparing, but she delivered everything perfectly. She received compliments, a generous tip, and an invitation. The school was hosting a cultural fair in a month, and they wanted her to be the official dessert vendor. Susan could barely believe it. It was the biggest order she had ever received. She told Ethan with shining eyes, "We're getting there, son. Mom, you're the best person I know. I'm just a brave mother, trying to fulfill her mission." That night, Susan stayed up late in the kitchen, but instead of feeling exhausted, she felt alive. For the first time in months, the dream felt closer. But the universe has its way of testing those who dare to dream, and Susan still had no idea what awaited her in the month to come. Susan Miller was never the kind of woman who complained about life. Since she was young, she had learned that the world didn't apologize, and crying too much only made your knees weaker. That's why, when the hardships started hitting harder, she simply tightened her apron, pulled her hair into an even firmer bun, and got to work. The sweet orders had grown, and with them, the workload. Susan was still working at the dental clinic on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But now she spent every Tuesday and Thursday morning delivering to local markets, small bakeries, and birthday parties. Weekends were just booth, oven, and booth again. She knew she was exhausted. She felt it in her back, in her wrists, in the dark circles under her eyes. But Ethan's gaze kept her going, a look full of hope, respect, and, behind it all, a hint of worry. Her son was now in his final semester of high school. With finals approaching, he stayed up late studying to maintain his GPA and secure the renewal of his partial scholarship. "Mom, you don't have to kill yourself like this. We could apply for a loan," he said, looking at her with guilt in his eyes. "And have you start your life in debt?" "No, Ethan. We're going to make it." What she didn't say was that she was already falling behind on bills. The electric company had sent a shut-off notice. Rent had gone up. And the old Honda Civic she used for deliveries was showing signs of fatigue. A strange noise when starting. Slow-to-respond brakes. Susan pretended not to notice. Pretending, sometimes, was survival. A rainy Saturday marked the beginning of a new chapter. She was at the private school fair, the same one where her cupcakes had once been a hit. Susan's makeshift tent struggled against the wind and the relentless splashes of the storm. The tarp flapped violently, and part of the table toppled over, spilling muffins into the soaked ground. Susan knelt in the mud to save what she could. Children laughed in the distance. Some parents simply looked away. But one woman, elegantly dressed, held an umbrella over her and asked gently, "Are you okay?" Susan nodded, her breath trembling. "Just a tough day. Want help setting things back up? If you can..." "Thank you." It was the same school principal. The woman helped straighten the table and picked up the treats that were still intact. "You're persistent," she said. "I'm a mother," Susan replied, with a tired smile. At the end of that day, she sold less than expected. She came home drenched, with a light fever and aching knees. Ethan ran to her as she arrived. "Mom, for God's sake, you're shaking. Just a cold." "This isn't just a cold. You're burning up. Lie down. I'll take care of everything." Susan tried to resist but gave in. Ethan tucked her in, made tea, brought soup, and placed a cold towel on her forehead. She closed her eyes for a moment and felt a different kind of peace. For a few minutes, it was him taking care of her. In the days that followed, even while sick, Susan refused to stop. Orders were already scheduled. She didn't want to disappoint anyone, especially not Ethan. But her energy was running on empty. One day, while carrying 2 boxes to the car, she lost her balance and fell to her knees on the asphalt. The boxes burst open, brownies scattered everywhere, and Susan just sat there, silently, staring at the ruined sweets and the gray sky above. It was Ethan who found her like that, 20 minutes later. He didn't say a word. He simply knelt beside his mother, gathered the wet brownie pieces, and put them back in the box. Then he hugged her. "It's okay. We'll figure it out, Mom." Susan cried right there, in the middle of the driveway, for the first time in a long while. That night, Ethan grabbed the computer and started building a simple website for his mom. Nothing fancy, but functional. He created a page with photos of her sweets, added the name of the brand, Sweet Susan's Bakery, and included a donation tab with a message. "My mom is an extraordinary woman. She sells sweets to pay for my college. If you'd like to help her keep making the world sweeter, any contribution is welcome." He shared it on Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter. In less than 24 hours, the post started to spread. Friends, teachers, classmates, and strangers began to donate. Some gave a few dollars, others were more generous. By the end of the week, they had raised $200. When Susan saw it, she broke down. "You did this for me?" "No, I did it for us, and for everyone who believes a brave mother deserves support." But with visibility also came cruel comments. "Why doesn't she get a real job? Trying to pay for college with cupcakes. Good luck, idiot." Just another sob story trying to score easy money. Susan read it all in silence. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. For 2 days, she didn't touch the oven. She withdrew, defeated, until, in the kitchen, she found a note stuck to the fridge. It was from Ethan. "You've faced worse. If you stop now, who else will show me what it means to fight? I believe in you. Always." Susan took a deep breath, grabbed her apron, tied it tight, and turned on the oven. The following week, she got an unexpected call. A small cafe in Columbus, the state capital, wanted to try her products for a week. A customer had tasted a muffin at an event and raved about it so much that the recommendation reached them. "We want your brownies and cookies, Susan. And if they sell well, we'd like to set up a weekly partnership." She could barely believe it. It could be the opportunity to stabilize her income and maybe even grow. She accepted immediately, but there was a problem. Production would have to triple, and she didn't have the setup for that. Just one oven, 2 trays, and her hands. That's when she made the hardest decision of her life. She sold the car. She didn't get much, but it was enough to buy a bigger oven and a used industrial mixer. Now deliveries would have to be done with a friend's help, or hitching rides. Ethan was stunned when he found out. "You sold the car?" "Yes, but I gained time, productivity, and hope." "Mom, this is crazy." "Sometimes, son, it's the crazy things that move the world." The partnership with the cafe worked. Within 2 weeks, Susan's treats were the most requested items on the menu. But her body was showing signs of collapse. On the eve of a major delivery, Susan fainted in the kitchen. Ethan found her on the floor, next to the oven. He rushed her to the hospital. Low blood pressure, exhaustion, doctor's orders, complete rest for at least a week. Susan cried, but not from pain. She cried because she couldn't deliver, because she had failed, because she wasn't strong enough. Ethan held her hand. "Mom, you didn't fail. You're just human. I can't stop now. And if you keep going like this, you won't be there to see me graduate." Those words hit her like a punch to the chest. Susan realized she had pushed too far. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she had gone beyond her limits. During her days of rest, she reflected. She needed to reorganize her routine, learn to ask for help, delegate, and above all, accept that being a brave mother didn't mean being invincible. With help from Ethan and some neighbors, she set up a small community kitchen in the garage. Volunteers came to help with packaging, labeling, deliveries. Her story had touched many. People wanted to give back. One day, a letter arrived in a blue envelope, stamped with the Ohio State University seal. It was thin. Susan's heart raced. Ethan opened it with trembling hands. It was the final acceptance. He had been admitted. And more. He had earned a full scholarship, thanks to his grades, involvement in social projects, and a recommendation letter written by the very same school principal who once bought cupcakes from Susan. They hugged for a long time. Susan cried like a child. Ethan did too. "You made it, son." "We made it, Mom." But there were still the basic living costs: housing, books, transportation. Susan's journey wasn't over. It had only changed shape, and the world, as always, still had more surprises in store for her. Spring arrived quietly in Wayland. The trees, once bare, now showed off green leaves and timid flowers. The town seemed to breathe again, and in the miller's modest home, something had changed. Something invisible, yet tangible. A new kind of hope had filled the air. Susan now woke up more calmly, not because the challenges had vanished, but because she had learned to share the weight she carried. The little makeshift kitchen in the garage was active every day, with help from neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had volunteered after hearing her story. Even so, she never stopped getting her hands dirty. Literally. She still personally prepared the dark chocolate brownies and the double chip cookies, Ethan's favorites, always adding an extra pinch of care to every batch, because a brave mother's love has no substitute. Ethan was excited about college. He spent afternoons filling out enrollment forms, reading university emails, and exploring the campus online. But at the same time, he was worried. "Aren't you going to miss me?" he asked one evening. Susan smiled as she spread butter on a warm slice of bread. "Of course I will, but I'll feel even more proud. This is what I always wanted for you. It'll be weird living without you waking me up with the smell of muffins. And it'll be strange for me not to hear you tapping your fingers on the table while studying. But this is what we do, right? We grow wings on our children, and then we help give the nest a push." There was pain in those words, but there was peace too. A few days before Ethan's move to Columbus, Susan organized a small gathering in the garage, which everyone now affectionately called Sweet Susan's HQ. It was a thank you to the community. She served sweets, lemonade, and even hung a banner with photos showing the before and after of the business. Some volunteers cried, others brought flowers. A group of students raised money and gave her an envelope with $600 to help with Ethan's books and transportation. "He's one of us," said a girl, eyes filled with tears. "And you're our inspiration." Susan thanked them with a choked voice. "I couldn't have done this without you. Every muffin sold, every delivery made, every late night with the oven on, all of it has a little bit of each of you. But more than that, it all has a purpose, to show that love is action, and a brave mother is one who doesn't give up, even when the world tells her to stop." The goodbye was hard. Susan held back tears as she helped Ethan pack the last boxes into a neighbor's car, who had offered to drive him to campus. She watched her son arrange his books, computer, backpack, and no longer saw the little boy who played with toy cars on the living room rug, but a man ready for the world, even if he didn't know it yet. "Do you have enough food in there?" she asked. "Mom, you packed enough to feed an army. Take the thicker coat. You never know when it'll get cold. It's in the back seat. And don't forget to—" "Mom," she stopped. Ethan hugged her tightly. "You gave me everything. I promise to honor every minute of your effort." She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to hold back the tears, but she couldn't. The words escaped her. She just hugged him tighter and stayed there for a long while. "Go, before I lock you in the house and throw away the key," she joked, wiping her face. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, my astronaut." And the car drove away, carrying part of Susan's heart, but also her greatest pride. The days that followed were quiet. The house felt bigger, the kitchen emptier. Susan felt the absence in every corner, but refused to sink into loneliness. She poured herself into her baking even more, but now in a more organized way, with schedules, spreadsheets, and rest. With help from a friend who was an accountant, she registered the business as a micro-enterprise. She started selling to 2 cafes, 3 local markets, and, most surprisingly, she received an invitation to participate in a regional food fair as a featured vendor. "It's just a little booth," she said. "It's a big milestone," everyone around her replied. At the fair, Susan displayed her sweets with a new visual identity, created by one of Ethan's former classmates, who had become a designer. The sign read, "Sweet Susans, baked with love, powered by purpose." On the second day of the fair, a woman approached the booth. She wore a sleek blazer, had her hair tied back, and a badge hanging from her neck. She was a representative from a local television program. "Hi, Susan. We heard about your story. Can I interview you?" She hesitated for a second, but nodded. The camera rolled as Susan shared her journey, mixed with shots of the booth, her kitchen, and photos of Ethan in his university uniform. 2 days later, the video went viral. Single mom sells sweets to pay for her son's college. What happened next will move you. The video was watched by over 2 million people. Emails started pouring in, invitations to events, investment offers, and messages from mothers all over the country saying, "You inspire me." Susan was stunned. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she knew it was no longer just about the sweets. Now, it was about hope. Meanwhile, Ethan's life at college was moving fast. At first, he called every day, then 3 times a week, then once a week. Susan understood. It was the natural cycle. But one Saturday afternoon, she was rolling labels when she heard the sound of the front door. She looked up and nearly dropped everything. Ethan was there, standing in the doorway, backpack on his shoulder and a mischievous smile on his face. "I miss the smell of muffins." She ran and hugged him. "What are you doing here?" "Came to spend the weekend. And I have something to tell you." Susan looked at him, curious. I was accepted as an intern at the university's Space Research Center. I start next semester." She was speechless. The tears came before the words. "I knew it. I always knew. I only got here because you pushed me when my legs were shaking. This internship is yours too." That night, there were no sweets baking. Just tea, laughter, and long conversations on the porch. Like in the old days, it felt as if the world had paused for a few hours to celebrate the love between a mother and her son. Months later, on Ethan's graduation day, Susan wore her best dress, carefully styled her hair, and put on an old necklace that had belonged to her mother. She sat in the front row of the bleachers, eyes gleaming, when Ethan's name was called on stage. She stood up, clapped, and cheered as if she were the only mother there. He walked across the stage with steady steps, turned toward the audience, pointed discreetly at her, and smiled. After the ceremony, he hugged her tightly and whispered in her ear, "This diploma has your name on it too." She cried and didn't try to hide it. "You gave me the greatest gift of all, Ethan, showing me it was all worth it. Every batch, every tear, every cent." Years passed. Today, Sweet Susan's Bakery is a charming little shop with a rustic wooden sign, flowered tables, and a wall full of customer photos and inspiring quotes. Susan is still there, now with employees, but still baking her special brownies from time to time, just to satisfy the longing. Ethan became an aerospace engineer. He works on projects involving satellites and cutting-edge technology, but every time he comes home, he still asks for the same thing. "Mom, save me 2 milk chocolate cookies. And a hug." Susan smiles. "I always have the cookies. The hug. You never even had to ask. Some people live to leave money. Others, to leave memories. Susan Miller lived to leave a legacy. She showed the world that a brave mother can turn a simple kitchen into a gateway to the future. That love is more than a feeling. It's a choice, a sacrifice, a leap of faith. And for anyone who asks if it's worth fighting for an impossible dream, she answers with a tray of muffins, a smile on her face, and certainty in her heart. I wasn't selling sweets. I was selling a dream, and it came true. If my story touched your heart, it's because you also believe that a mother's love can move the impossible. And if you know someone who's also quietly fighting, chasing dreams with whatever little they have, share this video with them. Sometimes, all a brave mother needs is to know she's not alone. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and stay with us on this journey of real stories that warm the soul. Because every mother has a bit of a hero inside. She just needs to be heard.